And guess what? We're live, and it's Thursday night, and it's the safety hangout. So, hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Um,
everybody.
Hi, welcome to the preload. Today is all about wet weather riding. And with us on the panel today, we have Biker Spike.
Hi.
I'll shorten that to Spike for the rest of this because it's quicker. And also we have Who Am I UK number one?
Hey,
Hi, everybody.
Dave!
Hi.
Also known as Dave, Mr. B, of course, and people that get along with me call me Andy. Right, okay. So where do we start? Wet weather riding. Now, the first thing, of course, is that I think there's different levels of wetness, if I can say that.
Can you say that?
I think I can if I expand it a little bit further
quickly.
into surface water on the road as opposed to a moist morning, which is all a little bit greasy. And we'll tackle both of those and go from there, I think. So, as again, I'm always conscious that I speak too much at the beginning of these. So I am going to nominate our new panel member. Yes. Biker Spike. Just your experience of wet weather riding, my friend.
Okay, well, I can start from, I think it was Saturday. I'll just fill you in a second. Basically, I've been riding for the past month without a bike MOT. Completely forgot for some reason, thought it was July. Hold my hand up, my fault. And one of the failures was a bold rear tyre. Now, owning a cruiser, it's very difficult to get down and just quickly glance and see your tyre condition. So I was riding to the MOT station, and guess what? Heaven's open, all good fun, rear bold tyre.
Ouch.
Yeah, not very fun at all. It weren't too bad on going straight, obviously, but hitting white lines, it was awful. It was god awful. And regarding braking, it was nasty. Very, very nasty.
Did you keep it shiny side up?
I did.
Excellent.
Very fortunate.
Good.
So that was. I take it you got new tyres now then.
Yeah, it's going for a retest tomorrow, but the tyre's been sorted now. So we're back riding soon.
Excellent. And in terms of, obviously you just said how what's the right word? How uncomfortable riding on slicks is in the wet.
Yeah, it is very uncomfortable. I mean, I'm looking forward to this brand new Pirelli tyre I've got on.
New tyres make a bike, I tell you. They
That's
really
it.
do. In all weathers. But yeah, so yeah, cheers for that, buddy. And you've already raised another subject about what I like to call as road paint.
Yes.
Markings, is another thing that we need to talk about at some point. So that's good. Yes. And there you go. You hit it first. Riding in slicks in the wet isn't fun.
No fun at all.
Right, just before I nip over across to Who Am I UK number one, or Dave, as he likes to be called, just quickly say hi to Chaos Theory and also Ratus Manus.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. Hi, SKS.
Okay, so while I clear those questions down and quickly say hi to also Calm Biker, who's going to join us for the 9 o'clock fully loaded, I'll hand over to Who Am I UK number one. And your experiences of riding in the wet.
Well, just to expand a little bit on what Spiker just said, the reason why slicks and tyres without any tread perform so badly in the wet is because it cannot move water. So when your tread depth gets smaller, it can't dispel as much water and get down to the tarmac underneath, and that's why it slides around so much. So the tyres in the wet is vital to have your tread. You have the correct amount of tread depth left. As soon as it gets there, change it. That's my advice. Yeah. In general, not to be specific because I'm sure that will come up later. When you're riding in the wet, slow down. Give yourself a decent amount of distance between you and the vehicle in front. sometimes 2 or even 3 times the amount of distance you would normally give. Don't snatch your brakes. If somebody pulls in front of you in your gap you've left for yourself, pull back. Don't get mad. Don't try and overtake. Just pull back, create your gap again. Don't step on the brakes, because that'll end up with you crying on the floor. Mainly use a rear brake if you can, and generally like that. Don't speed. The faster you go, the less effective your tyres are. You never ever want to aquaplane on a bike, because you'll be off as quick as anything. So those are the general quick tips.
Excellent. Cheers, buddy. Yeah, you don't want to be aquaplaning because you've only got 2 tyres. It's different in a car, I suppose, but on a bike, you know, you're only on 2 tyres. So what I'll do now is I'll just unselect you, Dave, after you finish talking. And I'll see your question there, Kev. We'll get to that in one moment. Now, what I want to talk about first is wet weather riding where there's surface water, as in properly wet. And we're going to assume that we have good tyres. Yeah. And we'll go from there, because obviously there's equations that you have to think about when you've got bad tyres, such as Biker Spike pointed out there. It's not a nice feeling being on slicks, you know. So assuming you've got good tyres, I think one of the first things that I hear a lot is that when it's wet, and we're talking surface water wet now with good tyres, some riders tend to be a little bit too gingerly round corners and that sort of thing. And if you've got good tyres and your tyres go through the surface water to get grip on the ground, then you know you've got you'll be surprised how much grip you've actually got. A lot of people get a bit gingerly about, you know, oh, can I go around the corner because, you know, it's wet and it'll be slippery. It's not as slippery as you think when you've got surface water, because your tyre is still reaching the tarmac or the asphalt, and your tyre tread is doing what QMI mentioned about there, is that getting rid of the water. And the whole point of your tyre tread is to make sure that the water can be channeled out of the way, so that you get some rubber down on the actual surface that you want to have contact with, in this case tarmac. So that's the third, and that's why it's important to have good tyres. Now, you can go into tyre detail a lot, and what I will do is I'm going to put a link to a very interesting document that was produced by Michelin that talks about tyres and how they cope and all sorts of this. It's a mind-blowing document. Some of it's really high level, and some of it's quite basic, but you know, it's an interesting document. I won't put a link on it now because people get lost in it, because it is so interesting to read. One of the first things it talks about is the fact that your tyres are always slipping, but they're never skidding. And as long as your tyres are slipping, you've got grip. I know, and that's how mind-blowing it can be when you read a document. But it all makes sense when you read it, after you read it about 3 times anyway. Okay, right. So, in terms of, let's start with braking distance. David, you talked about that. So remember, we're talking surface water type of wet riding and good tyres. What sort of changes do you make to the way you ride from riding distances, from riding in the dry to riding in the wet?
Minimum for me, personal preference, is at least double. I try to give myself 2 cars length between me and the person in front anyway. So that would be 4 cars. I'm used to driving in the wet, and I'm used to looking ahead of the vehicle in front. So sometimes I slip and get a little bit closer. But if you're new, I would suggest definitely keep at least 4 to 5 car lengths away from the vehicle in front. Don't fixate on the car in front. Don't try to ride in its tracks or in the center of the road. Just driving normal, driving away, and keep about 4 to 5 car lengths ahead, behind. Look ahead of the car in front to see what they're doing, and generally just drive smoothly and don't be aggressive. And aggressive is the one thing that will kick you off quicker than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And just to pick up on what you say about the car lengths, obviously it depends on how fast you're going, but hopefully it'll be sensible if we're going too fast anyway. but and looking ahead is important, well, because what you don't want to end up putting yourself in a position is where something's going to take you by surprise. Because when things take you by surprise, you'll tend to snatch the brakes quicker, and that's the last thing you want to do when riding the wet is snatch the brakes. So yeah, some good points there, David. Thank you. Over to you, Biker Spike.
Right, taking off from where you just said about snatching brakes. Who actually here filters when it's raining?
I do.
Yeah.
Slow traffic, not too fast though, because it's a bit scary.
That's it. Absolutely hate filtering when it's raining. A, because like you said, you can snatch your brakes and down you come. And not only that, you're getting all the water dispersion from the cars, I find. I mean, yeah, with bikers, we don't want to be stuck behind cars all day while it's raining. But I just hate filtering when it's raining. I don't know if you guys feel that the same way.
Sorry, mate. I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to filtering, it's a personal preference. When it gets to 20 miles an hour, I don't filter. It's because I'm making progress to the speed that I'm happy with anyway. I mean, talking about city roads and stuff like that, not motorway. 20 miles an hour, I don't bother filtering. You got a good point to looking out for spray from other vehicles, especially lorries and things like that, because the amount of water they kick out will just cover you in seconds. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, that, because one of the other things, of course, that you'll find when riding in the wet is that your visor's going to get water on it.
That's it.
And so you're going to have to deal with that one. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent for a minute. I'm going to write that down, visor. But for me, pretty much what everyone else has already said. You've got your decent tyres, you've got surface water, so you've still got a fair amount of grip, but you want to extend your stopping distance pretty much by double. I do, just to be safe.
Yeah.
And David mentioned earlier that if someone does take your spacer, that space that you've been keeping, keep yourself safe, then drop back again. Yeah. Unfortunately, you do get idiots on the road that don't respect that space you've given yourself. So yeah, always drop back if that's the case. And filtering, again, I agree with you, Biker Spike. I'm a lot more apprehensive about filtering in the wet. The other thing is you can't really quite see the road surface clearly enough to know what you're actually filtering on.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's all about situation and circumstances. On the motorways, that they tend to be a lot clearer. Therefore, filtering is a little bit more confident, if you like. But on small roads, you don't know what's there, and I'll just sort of go along with the flow really, unless I can see it's clear. So that's pretty much what I would do. In terms of cornering, let's go with Biker Spike this time. In terms of cornering, do you really change your habits much when it's riding in the wet?
It depends where I'm riding, really. Country roads, I'm a bit on edge, because obviously there could be mud and stuff, and mud when wet is lethal. But generally, not really, no.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm looking ahead and I can see a good bit of muck, then I will just take my time, go around it. But generally, I'll just ride normally.
Yeah. David?
I do. I slow down. The two main reasons for that. One, as we all know, I have a neck problem, and I can't turn my head as much to see where I'm going. So I tend to slow down a bit. But the second thing is, where I live, there's an awful lot of trucks around, and the amount of diesel that is brought up is quite a lot. So I tend to slow down just a little, mainly roundabouts really. But on motorways and smooth bends, which I can see around, I don't change.
Yeah. And I understand there, obviously you've got that, the restriction of your movement of your neck there, so I understand that you need to slow down to give you that more time, which makes absolute sense. And for me as well, my habits are normally I ride a little bit slower. I can be a bit of an aggressive rider anyway, but in the wet, I definitely tone it down, give myself more stopping distance, take corners normally, if you like. And you've got to understand that you do have that grip. And for those people that don't ride in the wet, or they store their bikes away and then take them out in the summer, in England, in the UK, you're always going to get caught out, you know, by these odd showers that come along. So you will end up riding in the wet. So it's not a bad idea to practice it. And if you're worried about getting your bike dirty, as soon as you get home, just wash it down, put it in your garage or shed, wherever you put your bike, and dry it off, and it'll be fine. You know, it'll be fine. So yeah, try and get a bit of experience of it. Don't be scared of cornering when you've got surface water. Okay, so last point then, before we move on to different types of circumstances, and the first thing I'll pick up on is Big Kev's question. The last thing that we haven't talked about really so much is accelerating and braking. So just quickly cover those off, and then we'll move into the different circumstances of levels of wetness and so on. David, let's start with you in terms of accelerating and braking habits there.
In straight line, accelerating, I don't bother to change. I do what I normally do. That's not a problem. Braking, I am a lot easier. 9 times out of 10, I don't use the front brake unless I have to, but if I do, then the back brake goes on first for me, and then it's 50-50. I don't do any more than 50-50. Quite often, I use more back brake than I do front brake. It's just saves locking up. I mean, if you lock up a back brake, you'll squiggle from side to side, but you'll be all right. If you lock up a front brake, you're on the floor. So don't snatch your brakes.
Yeah. By this bike?
For me, well, I've got a V-twin engine, so I've got a lot of engine braking behind me. So again, I'll mainly use the back brake and probably just feather the front brake, but that's all I need really. As for accelerating, again, straights, that really doesn't change. I'll probably just idle it around corners, so nothing aggressive really.
Yeah. I'm pretty similar. Accelerating, no real different. Well, it is toned down, especially on my bike with the amount of horsepower, but normal acceleration. And in terms of braking, it's pretty much exactly the same format. Bless you, Mrs. B.
Sorry.
It's basically the same format as in the drive, really, except for you're not quite as heavy. And then you shouldn't need to be either, because you've got that extra different distance that you give yourself in the first place. But yeah, you'll still have grip on the front. You need to get the weight onto the front tyre to get that, you know, that grip so that you can gauge the brake. And so it's again gently on, get the weight onto the front tyre, and then you can start feather on the brake more and more. Okay, and that way you keep your grip. But the trouble is, and the frequent problems that people encounter, I'm not going to mention any names, but one's right in my head right now. But if you snatch the front brake in wet, you won't get that grip you need. You won't have the weight on the front tyre to get the grip to slow you down. So what will happen is the tyre will just go from underneath you. As simple as that. So give yourself the distance so that you can gradually apply the brakes and get the weight on the front tyre, and you will have some grip there to actually slow it down. In my experience. Okay, so I think we've covered off cornering, stopping, going, and general riding in the wet and giving yourself that extra space. So now we'll tackle some of the different scenarios that you might come up against whilst in the wet. And let's take Kev's question, Big Kev's, hi Kev, who has asked, if the road is just starting to dry out and the wheel tracks are still wet, but the centre is dry, would you ride in the centre considering the oil and diesel, or would you ride, I guess was the last part of that, in the tracks? And let's go with Bike Spike first.
I'm afraid I'm not experienced enough to answer that question, so I'm going to pass that one on to you.
Okay, David?
Quite often I'll look for the drier patch of road. 9 times out of 10, when it's been raining, I don't know about Australia because they have lots of hot summer days, but over here, when it's been raining, all the oil comes to the surface and is washed away. So when it starts to dry out, the centre is quite clear 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. And for me, I tend to avoid, whether it's wet or dry, where you say the wheel tracks, because the road's a little bit more worn, therefore not quite as grippy sometimes. But if there is a dry patch, or like a dry line, then I will do my best to try and stay on that as long as there's no obstacles in the way, because obviously you've got more grip. It's as simple as that, really. But yeah, depending on the roads, I mean, our motorways in the UK, the inside lane, the slow lane where lorries go, they pounded the tarmac so much that there's not quite as much grip there as you would get in the dry. When it's wet, there's just a sort of reduction of grip there. I tend to ride off of the wheel line, if you like, in terms of that. But for me, I would always go for the dry part of the road if I can. And I hope that answers your question, Big Kev. And thank you for the question. Okay. Calm biker, I wish you wouldn't ask silly random questions. I'm going to quickly pop it up anyway. Does it sometimes get dry where you live?
That's a fair question.
Okay, in the UK, it does get dry now and then for me, and I have experienced riding on dry roads before. Dave?
Yes, it does get dry around me on occasions. In Scotland, you might have only 2 days where it's dry, but down here, we do get about a little bit more than 2 days.
And Biker Spike, have you experienced dry road riding?
Recently, yes, thankfully enough. But today, it absolutely slammed it down. So, and then again, the bike's in for repair. So, yes, it's good.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Calm Biker. Yes, we have experienced riding on dry roads. Thank you. Okay, let's quickly take Bex next, seeing as Calm's flooded us with questions. Hi, Bex88. Nice to have you along. Okay, I think this is a comment more than the question. Only a 4 breaks the 2-second rule, but when it pours, make it 4. Ooh!
Very nice.
Know it. Very good. Yes.
Very good.
Yeah, in the UK, for those that are watching in other countries, we have an advert, a safety advert, where basically, if you count in seconds between you and an object that you see that comes past on the road, 2 seconds, and if that object comes past you before 2 seconds have elapsed, then you're too close to the car in front, and that's what they call the 2-second rule. Things like lampposts and any mark, a tree, whatever it may be. And so, therefore, the little poem that Bex88 has put up there, it's very nice. Only a 4 breaks a 2-second rule, and when it pours, make it 4. 4-second gap. Very nice, like that. Cheers, Bex. Okay, let's quickly tackle another one. Let's have a look. Let's go for this one. I think we might have covered this already. So, Comebacker says, brakes are easier to lock up in the rain, but not that much easier. As long as you squeeze them on, you should be totally fine. Yeah, we did talk about that. An excellent mate for you to confirm you've had the same experience.
Yep, I do believe that. I have, when I was younger, locked up the front, and I was very lucky to get away with it because I released it quickly and pulled it back on again. But that was when I was only riding for about 6 months. I've also, when it comes to aquaplaning, which is why I know this, I decided to go full throttle through this big, deep puddle that was at the bottom of this little ridge, and I thought, this will be fun, get lots of spray everywhere. I nearly came off. It just went woof, and it was like hitting a brick wall. So don't do that.
Yeah. Riding in big puddles is when you've got a motocrosser.
I was on a Honda H100A.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more quickly from Calm Biker. He says, it's best, I think, to keep the throttle on in bends and keep a good lean on. If you try to keep the bike too upright and close the throttle, the bike gets skittish and you have less rubber on the ground. Modern tyres should have a larger contact patch leaning. Yeah. Pretty much. If it's got good surface war, then, as I said before, and others have mentioned as well, that kind of ride as you would normally, take into account the extra distance that you need to leave yourself for braking. But apart from that, you should still have plenty of grip, as long as your tyres are good. If your tyres are low, then it's a different story. Absolutely. And Spike's already proven that by his gingerly ridden ride with a ball back tyre to the garage.
Indeed.
Indeed. Right. Now, let's move on to some other circumstances that we come across as bikers when it's wet, and how are we doing for time? Wow, it's flying by already. So, road markings and things like manhole covers and drains and things like that. I think we need to quickly talk about that one. Let's start with David. How do you avoid those very problematic road circumstances where you've got road paint markings and covers and stuff?
Well, the road paint and markings, as long as you're going across them and not with them in a line, you tend to not worry. Most of the painted surfaces in this country, they use like a grit in them as well, but not all. So when you're going across them, that's not too bad. Manhole covers, on the other hand, I take very slowly. I had a tank slapper when I was younger on a very smooth one of those. I'm very wary of those now. It's something that's never left me in my brain. Be very careful over wet or damp manhole covers, because if you try opening up the throttle too quick, your back wheel will spin faster than a dragster.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spike.
Well, as for white lines, I tend to go over them very, very evenly. So I won't accelerate, I won't decelerate, I'll just keep the constant to go straight. Coring on them, I hate doing, and I'll try and avoid it in every way possible. So, but if I need to do it, again, I'll probably just drop off the throttle slightly and just take it really, really steady. Manhole covers, well, due to a personal accident I had when I was a kid, I avoid them like the plague anyway, because that absolutely freaked me out now. But again, going over them nice and steady, no hard accelerating, no hard braking, and you should be good to go.
Yeah. Did you actually come off them from a manhole cover or something?
No, I fell down one as a kid.
Don't laugh.
I wasn't. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that, mate.
No, it was funny at the time. Believe me.
Yeah, no. Obviously, if there's no manhole cover there, that's even more dangerous. But
the manhole cover was there; it just wasn't secure. I just went straight down.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen before where cars have flipped open manhole covers when they were driving over them as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the same for me in terms, and that's why filtering is not so much fun, because quite often there's road paint there, or there's all sorts of stuff, and therefore you tend to avoid it. And I tend to treat it like ice too. It's too unpredictable. You don't know whether it's got the grit in it, as Dave mentioned, or not. Around here, it definitely doesn't, and it is like just going onto some ice or diesel, and you just don't accelerate, don't brake, just get off it as soon as you can. Ride across it, try to avoid it wherever possible. Totally agree. Absolutely. Now, actually, oh my word, that's spooky, because Carl Biker has just asked a question that I was going to mention as well. And this is one thing: make sure your tyre pressures are correct. You should anyway, but it's doubly important in the wet. Absolutely. Now, the reason why I say that is because I had it written down on my notepad to make sure that I brought this up. I've heard of people reducing their tyre pressure to ride in the wet. Now, I don't know if anyone else has heard of that before.
Heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I've heard of reducing tyre pressure is in snow, so you get a wider surface. But in the wet, all it'll do is the edges will go and the inside will just lift up at the way.
Yeah, you've heard that as well, have you, Biker Spike?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, basically the quick and short answer to that is don't do it. There's a reason why your tyres have got a recommended tyre pressure. Is to make sure that the tyre keeps the right shape. And that shape is designed to disperse water and make sure you get the best grip. Okay? Especially in wet. So therefore, if you reduce your tyre pressure, you deform the intended shape of the tyre, and it won't act as well in the wet. So, so thanks for raising that, Mike. I was going to bring that up, and it's spooky that you mentioned it. But yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do not reduce. Always check your tyre pressure. Make sure it's correct, especially if you're riding in the wet, to make sure you get that optimum grip. And talking of grip, make sure your tyres are in good order if you're going to ride in the wet, because they don't grip when you've got a bald tyre, do they, Biker Spike?
No.
It should be one of the daily checks. I know people always tell you about daily checks, and I know most of the riders here and on the panel probably don't check daily, but maybe every other day or once a week or whatever. But you really should check them daily. When I get to work, the first thing I do is I rub around my tyre, make sure that's okay. Just had a new one, by the way, on the back. But yeah, just check them as often as you can. Don't get lackadaisical. Don't get compliant or complacent is the word I was looking for. It's just not worth it in the long run. Your life depends on these two tyres. On a car, if you got one blow up like I had a couple of weeks ago with my mate when I was in his, we just roll to a stop and change the tyre. With a bike, if it blows up, you were probably looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds of damage. So look after your tyres. It's the first point of contact between you and the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point. Do you want to add anything to that, Biker Spike?
No, is completely bang on me everything he said.
Yeah.
Shame on me.
I agree. You always check your tyres. You know, I mean, you just do it anyway. I mean, there's no circumstances where you shouldn't do it, so why not do it for all weather?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there as a young rider when I first started, when I was 18. I did that. I used to not bother checking my tyre pressures for weeks or even months. You know, you just don't worry about it. Oh, it looks all right. It's still up. It's still got its shape, and you go out. And I have, on occasions, as Mr. Bean knows, had a flat tyre, so I've gone at 80 miles an hour, so the centrifugal force pulls it out and keeps you upright. But those are the stupid days. Don't do it. I was very lucky those days. Don't do it. Just look after your tyres.
Yeah, the older you get, the more you realise that how silly you were when you were younger, and the rest you said.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've all done it.
Very much so.
Yeah. So the next thing that I want to pick up on then, now we've talked about all those circumstances and the road paint and everything else, I'm just going to quickly go on to the visors and how you, because it's something that a lot of people wouldn't expect to talk about, but riding in the wet, we were talking about spray coming off of lorries and trucks, and they do produce a lot of spray, and that's why you tend to avoid them so much. But when your visor is getting misted, or you're getting lots of excess water in it, then let's go to Dave first. How do you deal with getting, keeping your visor clear, basically?
Well, if you have a nice clean visor, I find the water tends to run off it anyway. One of the quick techniques is to just move your head left or right, which I find hard to do, and the wind will blow it off. You can use the back of your glove if you want to keep the water off, but most of the time I just tend to ride with it raining on it, because you can still see out of it. Your distance is reduced, but you can still see out of it. So just use the back of your glove or whatever as you're going.
Yeah. Biker Spike?
Well, moving your head left to right, it only works really well when you are going quite at speed. And speed in wet weather is not ideal, as you know. So what I tend to do, and this is no joke, I just shake my head like a dog.
If it works,
go like that. It works.
I'll have to try that.
Honestly, it's hilarious. You see the cars coming down the road, they're thinking, what?
What did I do? What are you shaking? Yeah, I mean, yeah, as Dave said, it depends. If your visor is absolutely crisply clean and freshly clean, then water will just bead off it anyway. Depending on your visor, if you've got an old visor, then get a new one. But yeah, it will bead off anyway, and you can do that, turn your head, but again, it all depends on the quality of your visor and how clean it is. If it's an old visor, then turning your head ain't going to do nothing, and you'll have to be doing like 120 miles an hour to get it clear off. But yeah, the turning to head thing, it just basically makes the water bead off left and right as you turn your head. But like I say, you need a clean visor to do that. In terms of misting, if you don't have a pin lock, which I recommend for cold, wet weather riding anyway, then just crack a little hole in the crack a gap in the bottom of your visor, and that should demist it quite quickly. in the highway code it says stop, but if you're on the motorway, I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend you just crack a hole, a gap, and let it demist naturally. So the last bit I want to pick up on in riding in the wet, because we've talked about normal good tyres riding in rain where you've got surface water. The next thing, the one that I find the most trickiest, is riding when the road is moist, like a morning dew, where you've got you haven't got that clear-cut way through to the tarmac because you've got a thin layer of oil or diesel or whatever it may be on there. And so, in terms of, let's go to bike to spike first. How do you deal with that, the moist road as opposed to a wet road?
The moist road, I'm always a little extra careful on for that reason. You've got diesel, you've got oil. It's been cold, so everything's a lot more dense rather than loose. So I'll just go in accelerating, not extremely heavy, just again feather it up. Nice soft gear changes. Braking, again, very, very carefully. Cornering, I tend to do about 10 miles per hour slower for that reason.
Yeah.
I say I used to work the morning shift. I think it started at 4:30 in the morning. And riding in the morning, well, evening, it's awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And Dave, how do you deal with these moist dew type road conditions?
Yeah, I agree with Spike that it's very much slow a lot further down. The roads are a hell of a lot more greasy and a lot less grippy. With diesel, you can often smell it before you see it. Not so much with oil, but keep your eyes peeled, not right in front of you because that's too close. You'll be off if you do that. Keep your eyes peeled in the distance for colour changes on the road. You can often see diesel before you get to it, especially around corners, because the last thing you want to do is have the back wheel slide out on you, which is a lot more likely in these greasy, horrible conditions.
Yeah, you get like a purpley, bluey hue, don't you, on the road where you can see that sort of stuff. And I think it's worthwhile mentioning as well that the real black spots where you are guaranteed to have diesel and oil and greasy conditions, and they tend to be at junctions, roundabouts especially, and most of all the exits and entry points to garages, fuel stations, are a nightmare. So you know, if you've got a garage coming up, you know how people can pull out on bikers. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before. But if there is a petrol station or a fuel station and you're coming up on that, really slow down, because if someone pulls out in front of you, you're going to have no grip to stop. So you know, take it really steady around that point. I mean, you're only taking a few seconds off of your journey time. Just be gingerly around that. You know, take it real steady. Give yourself plenty of braking space. And then make up for it once you get on the straights and stuff. You know how it is. I think is the best way to say it. But yeah, the moist road conditions is a different thing, because your tyre can't cut through the surface water to the tarmac because there is no surface water. You're just on grease already or diesel, and it's lethal stuff. So roundabouts and stuff like that, really take it steady. Try and keep as upright as you can. Don't worry about cars behind you that are bullying you. Trying to get you to go around faster, go around at your pace, what you're comfortable with, and take it easy, because your bike will just drop like a brick if you hit diesel and you try to take it too quickly. Trust me, diesel does not grip at all in moist road conditions. Okay, I've got about 5 minutes left. Sorry, do you guys want to add anything to what I just said there? Are you?
I was going to say, just take a leaf out of the Calm Biker's book and be calm when you're riding in these conditions.
Yes, be calm in moist road conditions. And someone mentioned, I think, in one of the comments, I must say though, many thanks for all these suggestions for the safety hangouts. I'll make a list and it'll be out there soon. Well, I'll stay on track. So let's just quickly go through the last few questions we've got left. The infamous biker says, should his tyres be round? You've got round tyres? Yes, mate, thanks for that lovely, wonderful nugget of information there. Yep, tyres should be round. These are the regulars, you see, they'll be all causing trouble at 9 o'clock. Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so Big Kev says, the older you get, the more it hurts if you fall off. Yeah, the trick is not to fall off. I've fallen off doing motocross and it hurts, but I've not fallen off on a road bike, and I really don't want to experience it if I can. And I'm getting quite old. Guys, so obviously Skeggy says, hi Skeggy, don't fall off then, Big Kev. Yeah, I think I've just mentioned that. Hi as well to Mad Max, Chaz. We've got like 4 minutes, so you two guys on the panel, thank you very much for coming. Is there anything else that you want to mention about wet weather riding? I know it's only it flies by, doesn't it? 45 minutes.
It does.
But is there anything you want to mention about wet weather riding that we haven't covered already? It's a massive subject, and we'll probably come back to it again at some point.
I guess, how do you two ride after it's been raining and then the sun comes out and is warming everything back up? Because obviously you've got the rain that's come down, kicked all the crap up, and now you've got the sun warming it up. I mean, how do you change your riding for that?
Dave, do you want to go?
Well, if the road, if the road is still wet and the sun is blaring out, make sure you got your sunglasses on. I've had 2 incidences with sun that has blinded me to the point where I've hit somebody. This is years and years ago. And that is mainly my fault because I couldn't see, and I was riding too close to the vehicle in front. So, yeah, definitely. That's why I always talk about keeping your safety distance. If you can't see, then you're not driving within your braking distance. Whilst it's drying out, it's still classed as greasy and treacherous. So drive like it's wet until you see a dry line. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I mean, if it's absolutely lashed it down and the road's had a really good wash, then I feel a little bit more confident about going a little bit faster. But I'm always cautious because there's nothing to stop a lorry dropping some diesel as it's starting to dry out, and then you've got that very same problem again. Especially roundabouts and things like that, just because it's drying out and it's had a really good wash. Vehicles drop diesel in oil all the time, yeah, so bear that in mind, especially for corners. On a straight, I'm a little bit more confident, away from the black spots that we mentioned before about like roundabouts and fuel stations, things like that you need to avoid. And car parks, general big superstore car parks, if you ride your bike there, I mean, all the cars park up, they drip oil everywhere, and it tends to sort of like, when it rains, it spreads the oil nicely.
Like an ice rink.
So watch out for those as well, yeah, really. That's all I would say to that. Dave, you got anything else that you want to pick up on quickly?
Just a little preamble before we started. I think Spike wanted to mention about gear. Wear whatever you can to keep the water off you for as long as possible without making you sweat too much. I know it sounds an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms. If it's keeping you dry, it's going to get you wet, But try to keep dry, because there's nothing worse than being wet when riding around, because your concentration will be about getting home, getting dry, rather than riding.
Yeah. I had experience of that because when I did the Lincoln ride, it rained all the way home, so I stopped at a bridge and put my wet weather gear on, but I did get very hot riding the rest of the way home. Not pleasant, but you want to keep you dry and also protect your leathers and stuff as well. Okay. Fantastic. Well, it's now 9 o'clock, which means we need to end this safety hangout and go to the fully loaded, where all the comments that you can see flooding in now from some of the regulars. You can kind of guess where it's going to end up at some point tonight. But before we do that, let's say, first of all, thank you very much for everyone tuning in to watch this. And if you're watching this later, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful. As always, ask questions and anything else, any other topics you want to talk about, please ask. And I want to say a big thanks to Biker Spike.
No worries.
For coming along and helping out with this. And also, Who Am I UK #1.
See you, everybody.
And obviously for me as well. Many thanks for tuning in. Many thanks for your support, guys. I always, fresh blood on the panel is great. I like it. And so thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. And for now, all I can say is ride safe.
Ride invisible.
Oh, excellent. Okay, keep it shiny side up, and we'll see you on the Fully Loaded coming up very shortly on this channel. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.